I try to explain that in my presentation. First of all, the approach of Amsterdam is an integrated approach. E-mobility has a place in an integrated approach with the main goal to improve air quality and health in the city. Every year 15,000 inhabitants come extra to the city, so the urgence for clean and healthy mobility is clear, I think. And that's why we aim for zero emission in 2025, which is quite a high ambition, but we think it's possible while stimulating, facilitating and regulating measures. So regulating is for example, the low emission zones for the most polluting cars in the city. Stimulating measures, for example, subsidy schemes and privileges, like you might have seen at the central station, the taxi stand, when there is a priority rule for clean taxis. These days it's 1 out of every 2 taxis is clean, who is able to pick up customers, and in 1 or 2 years this will be totally clean taxis who are able to pick up, only clean taxis able to pick up clean taxis. And that's a system we agreed on together with the taxi organizations in Amsterdam, which is quite specific, I think, and will be rolled out on every taxi stand in the city in the coming years. So let's focus on the facilitating issue, because that's where the charging infrastructure comes in. In a city like Amsterdam, it's still crucial, and it was when we started, to have public infrastructure in place, because we then had the chicken and egg dilemma: no cars, no charging infrastructure, etc. And this is still the case. You talked this morning about Costa Rica, where everyone has his own garage and is able to charge his car. We don't have that luxury position, so public charging infrastructure is really crucial to install. And we think the city has a role in this, because we are the owner of the public space. We do so by a demand-driven approach, like Simone stated. So whenever there's a user, or when the existing charging infrastructure is occupied too high, we decide to put an extra charging point in place. And when there's a specific request for a certain location for charging infrastructure, we look at the data, at the occupancy rate, time of the day, and of course we try to combine these profiles of this so-called pillow charges during the night and charges during the day, and we try to combine them to have an efficient grid operated. The result nowadays is more than 2,000 public chargers on the street, more than 25 fast chargers, and a lot of private chargers, which we don't know because they are installed on private premises. But every time we ask providers like EVBox and the New Motion, it almost doubles the number of public infrastructure, so I think that's still the case. Like Simone stated, the data gives us a lot of insights about the usage of the charging infrastructure, of course. So it shows that every charging point makes more EV drivers coming into the city, and it's really being used by a lot of unique users. So the above is the unique users every month. So that's about 10,000 users coming into the city every month. Inhabitants, people who work here, people who visit here. And last year it was up to, 28, almost 30,000 unique users making use of the charging infrastructure. And that's good information to base decisions on, and it's good information to do analysis on future developments. So what if the mass market adoption is there? What will be the case? We have a lot of historic data which we can use to analyze all these different situations. So what about the future? We see e-mobility clearly as part of the energy transition. When this mass market is coming up of e-mobility, but also of solar and maybe some wind power locally, this will have an enormous impact on the energy system of the city. But they could also, when it's smart combined, and no one wants a stupid solution of course, but when it's a smart combination, they can reinforce each other. And ideally the electric car can be used to improve the number of sustainable energy generated and vice versa. That's how we would like to look at it. Ultimately, maybe some vehicle-to-grid solutions are necessary, or static stationary, like the Amsterdam Arena also stated this morning. And on a local level in public space, together with EVBox, we're preparing a pilot, putting stationary used batteries into parking lots, connecting it to a charging station, and look what is happening. So maybe we can shave the peaks at the local level, or maybe we can even lower the grid connection, because there's always enough capacity available in the batteries. And this could be interesting for the business case and the flexibility we would like to have. So what does this mean for the coming years in public space? I think we still have to facilitate all kinds of public charging infrastructure. That's the role of the city, to facilitate at least, and maybe to organize as well, like we're doing right now. So this could be public charging infrastructure, the normal charging infrastructure at parking spaces, fast charging based on the target groups, like the taxis and the distribution vans, who are frequent drivers in Amsterdam, but also facilitating at local premises when necessary. And of course, power should be generated as much as possible from sustainable energy, local sustainable energy from wind and solar power. And maybe customers should have the choice also to, maybe earn some money even with the car, by putting their battery available for stabilizing the grid or storing overloads of this sustainable energy. So I think we often forget, because it's an interesting subject and it's technique, but in the end the driver should have the end solution, because these are the ones we try to persuade, and it has to be convenient. So don't forget the driver. I think that's an important issue we sometimes forget. One of the pilots we started a few weeks ago is a smart charging pilot, together with the grid operator and our charge point operator, Nuon Heijmans. At 100 existing charging stations, we're going to steer on capacity and timing of the charge load. So first, this is based on local grid situations in the city of Amsterdam, but it's mostly used for getting experience on steering the charging capacity. So we're going to learn from this. And next step, we'll take the amount of sun energy on a local base into account, and we will try to combine this information. And I think some aggregator role somehow is necessary. But first, let's practice how we can steer on the capacity, on the timing, on the location, and see how this works and what's happening. And this is one of the projects we're heading for. Then another interesting question. Like Simone said, we have a dense grid already. At first, we put a charging station on every request because there was no charging infrastructure available. Now, at several places in the city, we have a dense grid of a maximum of 300 meters from your house or from your work. There's always a charging station in place. So what should we do? Should we put one next to every charging station, or should we combine these installations and make a charging square, for example, or a charge hub where people know when I'm heading for this place, there's always a charging station available. Both situations we have already in place in the city on several locations, and we will of course analyze the data and see what users think of it, what will be the best solution for the future, and taking public space into account. Another thing we're testing right now. It was a question this morning. I think. Almost every week or every month there's someone coming to our office and asks, is it a good idea to combine the street lights and charging? And so finally we said, well, we have to know the answer to that question. So we did some research, And well, street lights are not that convenient because it's not enough power, and it's not on during the day, so that's quite practical. But we found some other interesting grid connections in the city. The city is loaded with grid connections for moving bridges, for waste containers, etc. And these are even quite big connections. And what we're trying to do is look at locations where parking lots and these existing grid connections are coming together, and we put charging stations on these same grid connections and see what's happening. And this could be an uptake for the business case as well. So, what will we do next, the next coming years to reach this zero emission ambition for 2025? We will keep facilitating our target groups like the frequent business drivers, the taxis, the vans in the city. And as stated already, the new forms of mobility, like the car-to-go sharing scheme, we see a shift from owning a car to sharing a car, and there will be more developments like this in the coming years. This could have an enormous impact on the mobility in general in the city, but also on the charging behavior. So we will have a close look at that, what this means for the charging data. I think this sums it all up, what our actions are in the coming years. I think together with all our partners, not only in the Netherlands but internationally, we have gained a lot of experience already and knowledge on the subject, and enough experience to set the next steps into zero emission ambition. And I think it's a realistic ambition. So let's put this together and go for it, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bart. I think you're really right. The city did really great work. It's not only automotive and energy, but it's the city of Amsterdam who really sparked this revolution.
Thank you.
So let's see what the audience would like to hear from you. If we can switch to that screen. Roger is asking questions. Could we see an Airbnb proposition to integrate the private charging network into the public one?
Well, I think the connection with private charging and also with fast charging and all other kind of forms of charging is really important. I think you see more and more private charging at local premises, at companies, and the integration between the public charging and the private charging could have an enormous impact on the efficiency of the grid, of the charging infrastructure, and maybe also on the business case. So I think the integration is really a good point.
Also, so private people share their charge point for other users.
Yeah, why not? Because when they're not here during the day, someone else can use the station.
Okay, sounds good. A really nice name, Leopoldo Chumarchero, if I pronounce it. Are the other big municipalities in Netherlands aligned with your policy and your ambitions? Maybe Leopoldo, where are you?
So my question is, now we know that Amsterdam has its own infrastructure and its particularity of being the metropolitan city here in the Netherlands, but also for the other big municipalities, are they also pursuing similar projects to pursue this goal for 2025?
Yes.
And are they aligned? Are they all aligned to fulfill a common goal?
Yeah, what I know, especially the G4, like Rotterdam, Utrecht and The Hague, they are aligned because they have the same ambitions. Started with air quality, but now switched to e-mobility in general. And I think there are more and more regions in the Netherlands who are following this example. So it's moving on.
Maybe Björn has asked a lot of questions. I think I didn't give him enough airtime yet. What happens when all cars in Amsterdam are EVs? That's you. I can hand you this one.
Yeah, I'm Björn. I'm from Norway. So I'm happy to see that there's some positive competition to be.
Of course.
So my question is just this is going to happen much faster than people think, right?
Yes.
So how many cars are there in Amsterdam, and how many parking spaces are there, and what happens when all of them are electric?
Well, about the parking spaces, the honest answer is nobody knows, but it's more than 250,000 parking spaces. So, and I think your question is, would it be necessary to put charging stations on every parking lot, or actually we don't know. What we do know is that the coming years we have to provide infrastructure, that's for sure. And we do know it's getting more and more efficient. I think we're seeing that more and more users per charging point are making use of it. It's interesting, of course, what happens when batteries are getting bigger. So then not everyone has to charge every day, like this is the case nowadays. Only the Teslas, you see, they will come every 2 days or every 3 days. So the efficiency of the charging infrastructure is getting higher. Maybe there's a combination with fast charging. So in the end, I think it's not necessary to put charging infrastructure on every parking lot, which is a vision which people think it's horrible. Well, of course I like it, but I think all these developments could, when we have a smart combination, it's not necessary. But it's a good question for the years coming up.
If I can just say, you see that the average connection time, but what happens is when with bigger batteries, you can connect fewer times and you can use more of the connection time to actually charge.
Yes, yeah. I think we call this the time ratio. So the time charging and versus the time connected is not that good at this moment, because the batteries are small, especially the plug-ins, who actually are charging, so that's good. But it's not really efficient. And when we turn to full electric vehicles, this is getting more and more efficient, so you can charge the whole connection time. But on the other hand, you don't have to be there every day, so that's good.
And maybe that is good for the business case as well, because
yes,
the charge point operator gets income. Maybe that I come to the last question. How do you fund the infrastructure at the moment? Because it's a massive infrastructure network, 2,500 charging points. We can see the map, it's all over the place. How do you fund that?
Yeah, well, we fund it from local government finance and from the national government. There's a national air quality program, so that's how we started. And at first, the infrastructure was really expensive, so there were millions and millions spent on the charging infrastructure at first. We did a tender last year, and we saw, I think it was about 20% of the first tender, the cost for a charging station. And well, I think the first results are getting there where there are tenders when you put enough concession time into the tender. The first results are there that the business case is getting close or is already there. So at first there is some money needed to start things up. And in the end, especially with the full electric cars and the higher efficiency of the infrastructure, I think the business case will be there in not so long time.
So that means the municipality doesn't have to fund infrastructure, it's a business case of its own.
That's the idea, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Well.